The opportunities and challenges in the European and American markets. Chinese new energy vehicles are destined to be a major highlight of the entire Chinese economy in 2023, and the systematic planning for their overseas expansion has become a top priority for many automakers. At the same time, foreign automakers entering the Chinese market have been rapidly unfolding. Recently, Volkswagen's $700 million investment in Xiaopeng Motors has caused a sensation on the internet, and can even be seen as another milestone in the development of the Chinese new energy vehicle industry. However, careful observation reveals that the sustainability of China's presence in the new energy sector in North America and Europe may still be uncertain. Firstly, the global electric vehicle market has entered a stage of intense competition, transitioning from subsidy-driven to market-driven. This is currently a critical turning point. After enduring this fierce competition, the number of manufacturers that can survive is likely to be no more than 10. Secondly, there are numerous challenges for Chinese new energy vehicles to go global. In 2018, the U.S. unilaterally imposed a 25% tariff and implemented a series of protectionist industrial policies targeting Chinese manufacturing. Although Europe has maintained an open market and the French government has openly welcomed Chinese new energy vehicle companies, there have been frequent voices of investigation regarding anti-dumping and anti-monopoly measures recently. If the European market eventually closes its doors, the road for Chinese new energy vehicles to go global will become even more challenging. The challenges in the U.S. market outweigh the opportunities. In the face of China's rapidly rising electric vehicle industry, it can be said that the U.S. market's response has not been friendly. Since Donald Trump took office in 2017, the U.S. has been waving the flag of trade protectionism and imposing various tariffs on Chinese manufacturing, with the tariff on new energy vehicles reaching as high as 27.5%. The reality is harsh, as the cost of Chinese new energy vehicles entering the U.S. market is nearly 3 times higher than entering the EU market, just based on tariffs alone. Moreover, the probability of a fundamental reversal in U.S. tariff policies in the next 5 to 10 years is very small. Both the Democratic and Republican parties are cautious when it comes to Chinese new energy vehicles and the entire battery supply chain. In such an environment, it can be said that it is not easy for Chinese new energy vehicle companies to explore solutions in North America. From a longer-term perspective, the biggest obstacle for Chinese automakers is not the 27.5% tariff set by the U.S., but the uncertainty brought by the unfavorable political environment. However, the U.S. has not completely closed its doors to China, especially with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act promoted by Biden, which seems to leave a certain window of opportunity for Chinese companies, provided that they have sufficient capital and capability to achieve localization in North America. There are 2 methods. One is to enter through Mexico. Data shows that Mexico has become a transit hub for Chinese manufacturing to enter the North American market in 2022. The second method is to establish factories in the U.S. through international brands. For example, Geely Automobile acquired the Volvo brand and built a factory in South Carolina to produce fully electric SUVs for the North American market. For companies with overseas investment and acquisitions, it seems that they can temporarily avoid the challenges. However, for Chinese companies without the endorsement of Western brands, the barriers to enter the U.S. market are clearly higher. CATL, a Chinese battery company, attempted to establish a battery factory in northern Michigan but faced challenges from the state government and local stakeholders. Going solo is not feasible. Can forming joint ventures with U.S. companies reduce risks? The answer is also uncertain. Looking at the recent collaboration plan between Ford and contemporary Amperex Technology, CATL, it can be said that the U.S. political sphere has a firm stance on any cooperation involving Chinese companies. Even though Ford insists that they only obtained technology licenses and CATL has no role in the factory, U.S. lawmakers are relentless in further scrutinizing the collaboration. even delving into minute details such as all the attachments related to the agreement and the number of Chinese and American employees the factory will hire in the future. Although the overall tone of the US-China relationship is unlikely to undergo a fundamental reversal in the next 5 to 10 years, at the specific industry policy level, the US is likely to move towards a more realistic risk reduction approach rather than completely decoupling. In other words, the scope of various control measures will be minimized as much as possible to reduce long-term harm to the industry as a whole. Therefore, the opportunity for Chinese new energy vehicles to enter the US is not completely absent, but it requires more patience, systematic planning, and experimentation. It can be seen that there are opportunities in the US market, but the challenges outweigh the opportunities. The key to the European market lies in local operations. The strong geopolitical instability between China and the United States has deeply unsettled Chinese enterprises. For Chinese new energy vehicle companies, the priority market for global expansion is no longer North America but Europe, Southeast Asia, and South America. Among these, the European market with the highest profit margin naturally becomes the top priority for Chinese automakers. After all, compared to Washington, Europe has virtually no intention of strong intervention. Moreover, the European Union continues to provide subsidies for battery-driven products manufactured in China, fully implementing the principle of regardless of origin, as long as it meets the standards in the large EU market. Firstly, EU subsidies apply to all imported and domestically produced cars and trucks. Whether it is made in China, the United States, or Europe, as long as it meets the standards, it can enjoy the same subsidy treatment. In addition, the EU's 2035 legislation on new internal combustion engine vehicles reached in 2022, as well as the recently passed 2030 and 2050 electric vehicle charging network, further enhance the attractiveness of the European electric vehicle market. Chinese companies invested over $24 billion in the European electric vehicle ecosystem last year, accounting for more than half of China's total direct investment in the European continent. This demonstrates the confidence Chinese companies have in the European market. Chinese automakers, from BYD and SAIC to new players like Xiaopeng, can be seen in many German cities such as Berlin, Munich, Düsseldorf, and Frankfurt. How have Chinese new energy vehicle companies performed in Europe in the past 3 years? In summary, it's a mixed bag. The good news is that the overall pace of exporting to Europe has been accelerating. According to data from the German Federal Statistical Office in 2023, the import volume of electric cars manufactured in China accounted for 28% of Germany's overall electric car imports in the first quarter, triple the amount in the first quarter of 2022. Concern is that the overall market penetration rate remains low, and the performance in the first half of 2023 is noticeably weaker than in 2022, except for a few markets. According to a survey by Schmidt Automotive Research, Chinese brands accounted for 5% of the electric vehicle market in Western Europe in the first 8 months of 2022. According to Standard & Poor's data, Chinese car brands accounted for only about 3.5% of European car sales in 2022. Even in Norway, where tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles are extremely low, the overall penetration rate of Chinese brands is less than 1%. In particular, the speed of Chinese new energy vehicles penetrating the European market slowed further in the first half of 2023. Experts have 3 perspectives on this. Firstly, the delivery speed advantage of Chinese brands in 2022 no longer exists in 2023. Secondly, Tesla has increased its market share globally in 2023 by adopting price reductions. Tesla has a strong price advantage. Thirdly, traditional Western European countries like Germany and France still have a certain loyalty to local brands. Of course, beyond market factors, Chinese new energy vehicles will inevitably face deeper challenges in their globalization efforts in Europe, particularly from non-market factors such as European politics and society. The path of Chinese new energy vehicle companies in Europe is bound to be more challenging than other Chinese manufacturers. Firstly, new energy vehicles are entering the core pillar of the European Union's economy, the automotive industry. The bottom line for the EU is very clear. It cannot accept the complete marginalization or even elimination of the traditional European automotive industry. The automotive industry is the largest industry and employer in Europe, accounting for over 10% of manufacturing activity and generating a trade surplus of 70 to 110 billion euros for the European economy each year. If the automotive trade were to form a deficit, it would inevitably bring tremendous employment pressure and social unrest to European society. Secondly, the direct impact of the Ukraine conflict has highlighted Europe's prioritization of security. The principle of the EU is that Chinese new energy vehicles can become strong, but the EU cannot accept a high dependence on China in the field of new energy vehicles in Europe. Judging from the timeframe set by the EU for its new energy vehicle coverage targets, China and Europe should form deeper cooperation in the new energy vehicle industry. Thirdly, the influence of the United States on the overall policy direction of the EU is increasing. If before 2020, the EU was more inclined to choose a dynamic balance between China and the United States, now the EU is more willing to stand with the United States on security issues. Especially when it comes to digital security and supply chain security issues, Brussels' rhetoric towards Washington is increasingly aligned, which is naturally unfavorable for Chinese companies venturing into Europe. However, these are ultimately market challenges. For Chinese companies to establish a firm foothold in Europe, they must have a profound and effective localization strategy in Europe. Only when Chinese automotive companies form a symbiotic relationship with European businesses, society, and politics can they survive in the European market in the long run.